I love Foursquare.
Oh, you said Foursquare.
You can't find that shit anywhere, man.
That's
know.
true. That with all the
With Fred Minnick, the Fred Minnick effect.
Is that what it is?
It's like Oprah.
Well, here, let's get one poured, and then we'll.
Actually, I did have a friend tell me, he's like, nobody was drinking rum until you asked her.
Hey everyone, we've been busy recording all new episodes that will round out all the remaining podcasts for 2017. Thank you to everyone who gave us great suggestions for guests on the show during the Russell's Reserve giveaway. We will also say thank you to everyone on Patreon who is supporting the show, as well as all the great sponsors we've had on recently. And for anybody that wants to know what the remaining calendar of podcasts are going to be, you have to be a supporter on Patreon. We put it out there so you can see exactly who's going to be coming on the show, and you can actually ask the questions. Give us the questions and the feedback you want us to ask these guests. So make sure you support us there. This episode kind of takes a new twist because, let's be honest, we all like Fred Minnick. He's funny, witty, insightful, and above all else, super knowledgeable and has a big influence on the bourbon community. I remember when he first started talking about rum, and I was a bit surprised, but there's been a shift happening. We talked about on the last community roundtable. I found myself buying a few bottles here and there, and I even put in a special favor to acquire some Foursquare rums here in Louisville. So if you want to know one of the only places where you can get Foursquare here in Louisville, send me a message at theduo, THEDUO, at bourbonpursuit.com. Now, I had to ask myself, with all this going on and a lot of this talk, we see things on the Facebook forums. They say the gradual progression of a bourbon drinker is they say, screw, I'm going to start drinking rum. And it makes you think, well, is rum going to make us all pick up and move? Well, honestly, I find that highly doubtful. The bourbon community is pretty tight, and we have hell, this podcast wouldn't exist if it wasn't for it. So we have to just say, without Fred, I probably would have shrugged my shoulders at it. So thanks, Fred, for opening up this bourbon drinker of almost 15 years to something new. And not only that, we're kind of titling this one Rum Pursuit. So with that, hopefully we don't make another spin-off podcast, but it's going to give you an idea of why bourbon drinkers need to really kind of care about what's happening in the rum world. So it's going to be a different take on it. Remember, if you like the show, support us on Patreon. And thank you to all of you who are supporting at $10 a month. You have no idea what it means, the amount of time that goes into producing these podcasts every week, and that monthly donation really keeps us going. And with that, enjoy this week's episode.
From their bar to yours, Chad and Sarah of the popular YouTube channel It's Bourbon Night bring you their favorite at-home old-fashioned mix with the new Elemental Elixir's Golden Hour Syrup. It's a custom-made syrup with notes of bold black tea, warm spices, and orange zest. All you need is your favorite whiskey and ice. No bitters needed. One bottle makes 16 drinks, so that's only $1 a cocktail before you add your own whiskey. They can also be enjoyed in other cocktails or spirits, mocktails, coffee, tea, and anything you can think of. It's crafted locally in Lexington, Kentucky, and you can get your bottle now at whiskeyambitions.com. Do you ever pour yourself a bourbon, swirl it around, and then start struggling to come up with tasting notes? And perhaps you're also looking for a good Father's Day gift idea. Well, you can now solve both with a kit from Knows Your Bourbon. And unlike other nosing kits on the market, Knows Your Bourbon kits feature real ingredients for the most authentic aromas. You can smell real Tahitian vanilla bean instead of some synthetic aroma that's just made from chemicals. So head on over to knowsyourbourbon.com and enter code BP10 for 10% off your order.
Play Whiskey Wednesday, Round 11, the memory game. Until June 26, each week you could win one of our 12 incredible grand prizes. Select 2 doors at checkout, and if they match on drawing night, you'll win that bottle. Not a match? No worries. You still score a Weller 12-year. Every $5 ticket gives you 5 chances to win, including 4 weekly bonus prizes. Get your tickets now at give270.org. Charitable Gaming License ORG 0002703.
Ed Bly and Rising Tide Spirits are back again with a new release of Old Stubborn Bourbon. And this release of Old Stubborn is a premium hand marriage of 10, 11, and 12-year cask strength, barely filtered pot still bourbon. It comes in at a staggering 123.8 proof, and the flavoring grain for this one, which the last one was wheated, but this time it's now rye. Rich, sweet, and bold with a long finish that's sure to be another eye-opener. You can order online at Sealbox or thebourbonconcierge.com, and you can even purchase in person at Revival Vintage Spirits, and even now with very few select stores in Kentucky. You can get it now while you can, but be sure to do it because it's not going to last long. Always find what you love at Total Wine & More. With so many great bottles to choose from at the lowest price, it's easy to find your favorite Cabernet or a new single barrel bourbon to try with some help from one of their friendly guides. And with every bottle comes the confidence of knowing you just found something amazing. With the lowest prices for over 30 years, find what you love and love what you find only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Spirits not sold in Virginia and North Carolina. Drink responsibly and be 21.
Welcome back to the first episode of the Rum Pursuit podcast. Right now, it's we're back again with Bourbon Pursuit, but this time we're taking a different angle. You know, I wouldn't say that we're getting bored with bourbon by any means. There's a lot of information that's out there. There's a lot of hoaxes and marketing and all these other kind of things, but every once in a while we got to diverge a little bit. And I think today is going to be kind of interesting. It's kind of fun because we've talked about it. I don't know how long, right?
Yeah, I mean, the first time we interviewed Fred, my rum drinking consisted of Bacardi 151 with flaming Dr. Peppers and, just pina coladas, the typical rum stuff. But he introduced us to some fantastic rums, and he's got an awesome book coming out, Rum Curious.
Yes, for anybody that has not known about it, because we actually talked about it a little bit on past episode 69 is when we had Fred on last, and we kind of started pouring it on of actually, a bunch of Beavis and Buttheads around here, right? Yeah. And then it was episode 69, but that's when we started really diving into a little bit of the rum, right? So this is going to be a cool episode where we get to really dive into it even more and talk about the book a little bit and talk about just rum in general. So
Absolutely.
So let's go ahead. Let's introduce our guest. So everybody, you know him already. He was a previous guest on episode 69. It was actually one of the highest rated podcasts, highest downloaded podcasts too of all time that we've had.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So welcome back to the show.
Your t-shirts in the office.
I appreciate
your party gift. Yeah. So welcome back to the show, Fred.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys.
So I'm gonna kind of start this kind of before the book was released, and it was an article you had back in February this year, and it was named "For Rum's Sake: An Open Letter to Bourbon Drinkers." So you were kind of teeing it up a little bit, right? Kind of teeing it up to try to say like there's gonna be something, if you're getting bored with bourbon, I think this is a good alternative for everybody that's wanting to dive into something different.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily an alternative. I think rum is a complement. There's a lot of similar flavors in what I consider to be the unadulterated rums, things that don't have additives to it. But what bourbon drinkers have is a fiery passion that every spirits category wants. Everybody is pursuing bourbon drinkers right now because you're active on social media and you show up to tastings, you delve into the history. And rum really, it's had that a little bit, but it's kind of been in spurts here and there, and it hasn't been that concentrated. And I believe that bourbon drinkers have the power to influence rum for the better. And you have bourbon consumers, in my opinion, are the creme de la creme of spirits consumers, because they will go off and taste other things. Like they start on bourbon, and they'll go to Scotch, or they'll go to rum, they'll go to cognac or Armagnac or Calvados, but they'll always come back to bourbon. And so it is like, bourbon is created like this like special kind of activist consumer. There's consumers who literally report people in violation of labels to the federal government. You can walk through a liquor store and find probably 6 bottles of rum that are in violation of federal government requirements. And so you have a category badly needing someone to kind of defend it, to take it under its wing. And that's happening a little bit in rum, but it's scattered all over the place, and it's largely coming from the trade. Consumers have just been kind of like when it comes to rum, it's always associated with like pirates and tiki and just generally fun. And it's a lot of things have just been accepted in rum. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just know that when the bourbon drinkers start coming to rum, they're going to want to see things adhered to as the regulations and the standards are prescribed by whatever government that may be. And I think that's where, when I wrote that blog post, that was kind of my intent, was to, let people know that, there's a lot of fake age statements out there in rum. There's a lot of undisclosed things happening to the rum before it gets to the bottle. There's subsidized rum. I mean, if there was an American bourbon distillery that had, a multi-billion-dollar subsidy on it for a 30-year period, I'm pretty sure I know the reaction of bourbon consumers. There's subsidized corn and what have you, but there's nothing like that to this depth in American whiskey. And so I think you have a lot of reasons for people to come over here just like the inner workings of the spirits industry reasons, which is something that really gravitates to bourbon consumers. Like, I get on social media and they're on there debating whether, the efficacy of the 1964 Declaration of Bourbon being a unique product of the United States. That's what we talk about in our spare time as bourbon geeks, and I love it. I mean, that passion is it could help a lot of other spirits categories, and that's why I kind of brought that up like I did.
So I kind of want to why rum though?
Yeah, why bourbon's so hot right now? Why wouldn't you just play off why come out with a rum book right now when bourbon is so hot and the thirst for information for it's so great?
That's a great question. I wrote Whiskey Women, I wrote Bourbon Curious, and then I wrote Bourbon. And I was looking at my next projects, and it was going to be, it would have to be a kind of one-off narrative of bourbon. So it would have to be a story of like a history of a distillery or some kind of scandal or something like that. And
hasn't been done yet.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, something that hasn't been done that would have to break out. And I am working on a second edition of Bourbon Curious. But those two books kind of covered, everything that I could from a categorical standpoint. Plus, I'm already writing so much for Whiskey Advocate and Whiskey Magazine that I have to make sure that I'm not
tapped out.
Yeah, that I'm not, overwriting and stuff. And to be honest with you,
a lot of copy paste.
Yeah, I can't. I can't do that actually.
Yeah,
but I am someone that I'm always I have to do like multiple projects at once. And what I have found is that, spending as much time in rum as I have has only reinvigorated my passion and love for bourbon. And it also, from the industry standpoint, it has made me, have had a lot of people have come to me and tell me that, they respect that I did that. And at the same time, I've had presidents come to me and say like, "You're not leaving bourbon, are you?" And that's really flattering.
Voice.
Well, hardly. I mean, I'm definitely not.
He's the only one that calls out their bullshit sometimes, right? So he keeps them honest too.
Well, I try to be fair. I try to be fair, and I try never to be, taken in by marketing. Those are two things that I try to never be mean. So if I call someone out, if you will, then it's not to be mean or mean-spirited. It's just merely going with facts, if you will. But going over to rum, it's like, I've studied. We all make our own paths, and there's not a lot of whiskey writers in the world. And you have people like Dave Broom who wrote a lot of other things, but he mostly stayed on Scotch. But a lot of people don't know this, but he wrote a rum book, he wrote a gin book. Dave Broom even wrote a vodka book. I've got an idea for a vodka book too, by the way. It's Vodka Curious.
Right, no.
Yep.
Can tell you really thought deep about the naming of this one, right?
250 blank pages.
I get it.
Just like the spirit.
I like it.
So
I kid.
So let's dive into the book a little bit, right? So I know it's available right now on Amazon, so you can go and you can order it.
It's beautiful, by the
best-
way.
Yes,
too.
but please go to your local bookstore and see if they have
and
it.
go to your local bookstore.
Carmichael's in Louisville. They carry it. I'm doing a signing with them in June. So
There we go.
They're,
So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you would learn in the book, right? I haven't read over the table of contents or anything like that yet, but just kind of talk about like just a high level overview. Like let's make people go by it. Let's give them a thirst of what's really there.
well, I lay out all the drama. So I lay out all the stuff going on in rum and all the things that it's tied to, such as slavery. And I talk about a lot of contemporary issues that are going on, such as
Turnover card.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of rewind. So the slavery thing. I mean, is that a now thing, or is that like a just a dirty past that you just kind of bring up and just as an anecdote?
Yeah. So basically, the sugarcane trade is connected to the slave trade because it takes so much labor to harvest sugarcane, and wherever there is sugarcane, there is basically rum. And being a byproduct of being made from the byproducts of making sugar, molasses, sugarcane juice, which is just fresh pressed sugarcane juice, and sugarcane syrup. Rum is intertwined with slavery, and it's in its roots, it's its history. They actually don't hide from it, so they will talk about it candidly on the islands. It's very interesting talking about slavery in the Caribbean versus here, where it seems like in the United States, people try to move on from the subject as fast as they can. It's something I learned in researching it on the whiskey side is like people don't like talking about it, but it is our history and we should talk about it. But at the same time, with the increase of things like the sugar beet for sweeteners and the effort to kind of keep Caribbean rum from the United States to penalize, slavery, and as well as keeping money from the crown of England, the rum empires started going down as the world pulled back from slavery. So there is a direct connection to the end of the slave trade and the lack of prosperity within the rum businesses. They would obviously rebound and still do okay, but in the United States, and this is something that I'm really proud of it in my book, and this is what piqued my interest in writing a rum book around 2011 was when I was researching whiskey women. I came across a whole boatload of material about Congress debating rum and molasses tariffs, and they wanted to penalize rum to actually help American whiskey distillers. They believe that for every bottle of rum drank, that was like
one less bottle of whiskey, right? Yeah.
And the whiskey was directly impacting farmers, and so they thought that it was better to encourage whiskey in the United States than it was to encourage rum imports. And so that's really where this book began for me, was finding that little nugget of research. And I've always loved the flavor of rum. I've always loved the taste. I judge it at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition, so it's a category I've always loved. And I'm not as much of a fan as on the cocktail side. My whole idea with rum is to help bring it back as a sipping spirit. In the 1800s, I mean, people were sipping Jamaican rum over brandy and in some cases whiskey. It is it kind of gets relegated to rum and coke, and the tiki cocktails are revered, and I love tiki cocktails.
Captain Morgan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just the blanket statement, right? Yeah.
And these rums don't have, every country has its own regulations and in place, and they're all very different. And there's not really anyone keeping a lot of the rum distillers in check. So in the United States, like our own government, which is forces rules on these guys, the whiskey guys. They kind of like don't pay as close of attention in rum, and they've allowed in the last year or two they've allowed a sorghum rum to be allowed, and they've allowed a sugar beet rum. Based on our regulations, rum must come from sugarcane. Now you can hear the other side, like the people who argue that those products should be allowed, but just on the base definition of what is rum in the United States, it should be from a sugarcane, byproduct or from sugarcane, and so that's kind of a long answer to whatever you asked me.
Yeah,
So,
really. I mean,
What did we ask?
Yeah, I don't remember.
We took a hard left there.
Yeah.
I mean, so we had talked. We're just diving into
you
the
asked
book,
me about
right?
slavery.
Yeah. So we'll tell you got a rich history and the knowledge right there. So I mean, what else can we find in the book, right? So we got the history. We've got some of the legalities or loose legalities that are into it. But what else?
I score rums. I tell you how the rums are made, whether or not there are any additives, and I rate them. I gave one perfect score, and I gave a score as low as 40. So I, just like I do with Whiskey Advocate, I assess them. This one here, this is like my base rum. Every rater has their.
He's talking about Admiral Rodney.
Admiral
is what he's
Rodney.
talking about.
Not Rooney.
Not Rooney. What we just found out. Not from.
This is
Ferris Bueller.
for me. This is a 90 point. 90 point rum.
Now, are a lot of these rums, can you easily find them, or are these like you got to go to the islands themselves?
Yeah, and most of them are not easy to find. The thing is, if you're in Kentucky, the Party Source by Cincinnati, they have an incredible rum selection. I bought a bunch of Foursquare stuff there. I got a Duncan Taylor 17-year-old from Panama. So you can find it here in Kentucky.
Not anymore. Fred Minnick effect just went into effect.
But you have to be on your retailer. And I mean, when you really have to be on them, because when you go in there and tell someone you want rum, nobody believes you that you want anything beyond Captain Morgan. And I think there's a real lack of education in the trade world, about rum and the flavors of rum. And, spiced rum is not rum, it's spiced rum. And so when you say you want a good sipping rum and you suggest to me a spiced rum, I'm like, that's not offensive, but that's almost like telling a whiskey drinker, like, oh, you're going to love Fireball, so, and while I have a much more higher level of tolerance with the flavored rums than I do with the flavored whiskeys, I want sipping rum. I don't want the lab produced flavored stuff all the time.
Right. So I kind of want to talk about some of the ingredients, right? Because for whiskey drinkers and bourbon drinkers, there's always three main ingredients.
51% corn.
Exactly.
Are the recipes that exact? Like,
yeah, that's what I want to talk about. Like, because there is, and I don't want to stick with the full gamut of things that are available that people say, like, oh, you can put additives and coloring. But I mean, what are the main ingredients that go into just making a generic rum? I mean, this is a rum 101 kind of.
So this is a difficult question to answer when I'm being held up on time because rum is it's mostly coming from molasses. You basically have three tiers of molasses, and the more molasses is a byproduct of making sugar. So it's the tarry substance that's left behind during the process. And when you make when you have a really highly industrialized, efficient sugar manufacturer, you have a lesser quality molasses because not as much material's coming through. But if you have like an 1800s era sugar mill, which a lot of those still exist, it's not very efficient. And so there's a lot more sweetening that's coming through in the molasses. And that's why the Caribbean molasses is so highly sought after, as well as the molasses in Louisiana. And Martinique and a lot of other people with the label agricole, they're using fresh squeezed sugarcane juice. And then you have a lot of people like an American distiller in Richland, Georgia, who are using sugarcane syrup.
They're not using Domino sugar.
A lot of people are.
Are they?
A lot of people will buy.
We try to say that as like a joke,
yeah.
and then he's like, "Oh no, it's serious." Right?
Yeah. Now some people will buy molasses from them because they get that material, and that they will sell it. So that's one thing, and the rum distillers are usually coming off the still at much higher proofs, and that's not a good or bad thing. It's just what they're doing. Like American distillers for whiskey are coming off the still at usually no higher than 160 proof, but the average is about 140. The rum guys will be coming off at 189, sometimes higher. I would say on average they're probably about 170 to 180 proof off the still. Some are coming off really low, like Deadhead in Mexico is coming off, but they tell me at 110 proof. So there's a lot of variance in still proofs in this.
What's the reasoning? I mean, is it just different flavors? Is it just?
That's just their style.
More production.
Well, and you also have a lot of pot stills and you have a lot of column stills. And what is very popular in rum is to blend the pot and the column distillate after it's aged, and they will also top off their barrels. So like here we lose 3 to 5% a year to evaporation, the Angel Share. In the Caribbean, it'll be anywhere from 6 to 10% per barrel. But they'll never let that barrel go all the way down. They'll take a barrel that's right next to it and top it off. Some countries forbid that, but Jamaica actually practices it. So you have a lot of variance there. They're going into used barrels as well, which is most American whiskey's going to new barrels, new charred oak barrels. Bourbon must always go into new charred oak barrels. So you have a lot of different things at play. There's so many variables in rum. I actually think making rum is harder. Making good rum is harder than making whiskey because you're so dependent upon a really good base, and it is not easy to ferment and to distill molasses. A lot of these guys are using natural yeast. Some are propagating yeast. Some are using there's occasional person using dry yeast. So it's a little bit all over the place in that realm.
I was about to say, I was like, what are the similarities between the whiskey and then the rum at the the yeast and the fermentation?
Yeah,
part?
You're not going to find anyone in American whiskey who, I guess there's one guy in New York. I can't. His name's escaping me right now. Real nice guy, former boxer, beard. His name will come to me in a bit. But he does. He'll do some wild yeast, but it's more of a tradition in like Jamaica and those places. And those natural yeast they've kind of been in that area for so long that they have created their own cultures. And they just let them invade. So I'd say
that's always one thing. At least the whiskey distillers are like, we got our own private yeast strain that we've had handed down for hundreds of years.
Well, and I would also say
safe at home.
I would also say American distillers, or Kentucky specifically, are much more beholden to their yeast than like Scotland. Scotland's not as, to them yeast is, they don't treat it as bad, as important as Kentucky does. That's just different styles, But so I think a lot of rum is blending, and so that's why Foursquare to me is the best rum distiller in the world. And
you heard it here, folks.
I agree and concur.
It's phenomenal, and you can taste the same stuff but different levels in the blend. So he'll have like I'm just making these numbers up, so this is nothing that I know he's doing, but like 60% pot still and the rest column, or vice versa. And they'll just be completely different. And they have all these variables. And if you throw in different types of oak, you have even more variables. So you have so many opportunities to create different flavors. And it's phenomenal. The problem is that you have a lot of distilleries who are ginormous industrial behemoths, and they're doing multi distillation runs. I mean, distilling 5-6 times, and that's the same as vodka. And if you have a rum that tastes like vodka, you have a problem. And so what they do is they put it in a barrel. It still tastes, it just tastes like aged vodka. So they'll put sugar in there or honey in there to try and save it. and then people are like, oh wow, that's really sweet. That's what rum is supposed to taste like. And so there's this, depiction in a lot of people's palates that rum has to be sweet. And that's because a lot of these distillers are actually trying to save their rum. Now, in defense of people who will add honey or different types of syrups or whatever, it's a tradition for some of them. Like in Panama, allegedly it's a tradition there. In Venezuela, it definitely is. You have plantation, which makes excellent rum. They're executing the classic French system of dosage.
In your opinion, I mean, is that a good thing or a bad thing, or they're taking something that should be natural and putting something that giving them an unfair competitive advantage? Like, what's your just thought about that?
Yeah, well, I think that if you're selling something, you're always going to have an opinion that your way is the best to sell more things. And I put everything on the taste. Like for me, like if I sometimes have a mood for something sweet, in which case I will reach for, a plantation XO. Sometimes I have a hankering for something that's really dry, but with like a hint of like apple or something like that. And then I'm going to pick, I'll just say something from Jamaica with that little bit of funk there. So there's a way to do these dosage techniques without making it like licking a sugar packet. In fact, we could taste a couple. I could illustrate it.
Here's a rookie don't know question. You go to a rum shelf and you see, white rums and brown rums. What is the difference there?
First of all, the things that you see on the label, like white, gold, dark, that's basically an explanation of food coloring. So for all these years, people have been buying rum based on food coloring. And some of the white rums will actually have been aged. There's a rum, that I pour a lot called Cartavio. They'll age it for 2 years. But
that one's not very good. People don't buy it.
Yeah. And see, Cartavio, that one you tasted, they add things to it. So,
okay.
So that was one that they did a nice job with the.
Yeah, that's like a Solera. Yeah. I think the oldest is like 18, but it can have a year old rum too in there.
Well, Solera cask and rum is one of those where you can't always trust because they may not be doing the traditional, like oldest top down thing that they're doing in Spain. But sometimes they're just dumping it in a cask. But Cartavio, they are doing it the old way. At any rate, so a lot of people will age a whiskey or rum. Can't confuse this here. Rum talk. They will age it a few years and then they will they'll filter out the color. Like that real McCoy right there, that 3-year-old there. That's 3 years old and they've stripped out the coloring. Now, at some point, some bean counter in one of these distilleries said, well, what if we stripped out all that beautiful flavor that we had in these from the oak barrels and sold it for daiquiris? And that started, that's how people started expecting the rum. And so you had a lot of these like decisions being made between like 1950 and like 1970 to kind of bring rum down to the level of just like vodka in some ways, but just a little bit above vodka. And it really lost its way as a sipping spirit. And that's where, and that kind of, like I mentioned, is one of my big goals with what I'm doing.
So one of the things that you had talked about with the barrel stuff kind of had me interested because, we lose 3 to 5% with the Angel share. However, you were saying that in the rum side of the house, they lose significantly more. Mm-hmm. In Kentucky, you've got the hot summers, the cold winters. And so I'm assuming that the aging process for rum, since it's all happening in the islands, it's typically hot. So you just have a typical being hot evaporation effect that's actually happening inside the barrels.
Yeah, it's extremely hot in the Caribbean. Yeah, so
they have it in rick houses or just like palletized?
Yeah, they're palletized for the most part. There are a couple rick housing. like the way they
The
do.
Busics don't go down there.
What's that?
The Busics don't go down there.
Yeah, well, the Busics aren't going down there to build their warehouses. They're really, a lot of them they're mostly like concrete. So concrete has a way of pushing the barrels harder, it's stuff I don't understand. Like and I don't think the distillers do either. A lot of the aging is a lot of unknown in terms of like the Wild Turkey release a couple years ago. The proof went down significantly. So, and that was because it was on a concrete floor, and it's just the way it is.
If you're anything like me, then you can't get enough about bourbon. And that's why I'm a subscriber to Bourbon Plus magazine. Bourbon Plus is a quarterly publication that tells the stories from the heart of bourbon, the farmers who grow the grain, the distillers who labor over the process, and the people like you and me who raise their glasses to celebrate it all. Subscribe to Bourbon Plus magazine today at bourbonplus.com, that's PLUS.com, and use code PURSUIT at checkout for $5 off your subscription. Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point of sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. Shopify's point of sale is your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. And with Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers in-line and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns, from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. And get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone. Transform your tablet into a point-of-sale system or use Shopify's point-of-sale Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Do retail right with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/bourbon, all lowercase, and go to shopify.com/bourbon to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/bourbon.
Okay, so I got another kind of question for you. So in the world of whiskey, you've got some variants. I guess you could say you got rye whiskey, you've got corn whiskey, you got bourbon whiskey. What about rum? Is it just rum, or do you just got basically just different blends of rum?
Oh no, rum has more variants than whiskey. You have Jamaica, which is to me the funk. You know, they get like a real funk note to it.
It's like the Dusty's funk here.
I really have a hard time describing what that funk is. The best thing I can say is it's got like a clove, a rich molasses covered clove. You know, so it's just funky. Have you ever had Jamaican jerk chicken?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Delicious. You can get it in California Pizza Kitchen too.
There's actually just a hint of like, sometimes a hint of that like Jamaican jerk in there. Jamaican rum is phenomenal. It has like its own like flavor. And it's to me the best Jamaican distillery is one called Hampton, and it's spelled Hampden. But there's someone who sells the majority of their rum to other people, and they try to. No one has a full collection of who has those rums and all that. But occasionally you'll see like Jamaica pop up, and you taste, and you're like, oh, I think this is there. But there's one that I know for sure that came from there. It's a Barrel Bourbon or Barrel Bourbon's rum. Mm-hmm. You know, they have one.
See a barrel rum.
Yeah, so barrel rum's real nice. It did real well in competition that I judge. But and so Appleton is very widely available. You know, that'll also have some of that funk. Martinique is also real unique. It's real earthy, real grassy. That's the agricole side. So they're using that fresh squeezed sugarcane juice, and they also have a lot of a lot of regulations on fermentation styles, off the still stuff, and they're very they follow that to a T. And I think Barbados is starting to come to its own. Barbados has really been, in terms of what we can get here, has really been Mount Gay, and Mount Gay is a fantastic brand. But with Foursquare coming on the scene, and Plantation just buying the West Indies distillery down there, I think you're going to start seeing a lot more really cool stuff from Barbados. And in America, we're finding our footing a little bit. You got a brand called Privateer, real nice, coming out of the New England area. There's that brand in Georgia, Richland Rum. They're going to new charred oak barrels every time, so to me, they're real appealing to a bourbon drinker. And then one in Colorado called Montagna, real nice rum.
Good deal. That's what we actually had. One of our Patreon supporters, Emmet Klocker, actually sent us some samples. He gave us a Lemon Hart, some Havana Club. I think it was like 7 or 9 years, something like that. And then 1931. So those are some other ones that I know that we've tried, which I thought they were good. But there was another one that was really interesting that he sent, and I'll kind of get your opinion on this, from a company out in, I think it's in California, called Lost Spirits. Right?
Oh, the aged.
Hyper-aged, whatever, like
the non-aged
6 days old
age.
or whatever it is, and it's like 160 proof. I don't know how they do it, but I mean, what's your kind of thoughts beyond that?
They are not in the book. I did not taste their stuff for the book, but in general, the rapid age stuff has been done before, and I'll just kind of leave it at that.
Okay.
I'm not really. I'm kind of. You could say I'm a purist, and when I've tasted these things, I've generally, thought the barrel did a better job.
So, what are the master distillers at rum distilleries like? Are they going to be icons like in the bourbon industry? You got Jimmy Russell and the Parker Beams of the world, where they're like a tight knit community and rock stars. Do you think that would ever happen?
So, in bourbon, we know the story of when Heaven Hill burned down in 1996. All the major companies kind of helped one another. If that were to happen in rum, I truly believe that there would be other distillers pouring gasoline on the fire.
They're like celebrating.
Little bit more cutthroat.
Well, I think it's really.
Well, I mean,
I use that as a joke, but they call each other out in public, and they will. And the big reason why is when one distillery is getting a $3 billion subsidy and keeping everything out of the market, from a shelving and marketing perspective, you can understand why there's some hostility there. And there's questionable rum on the market, and you have people who are trying to make, rum the old way, like Foursquare and Appleton, and they're being kind of fronted in the marketplace with people who want, stuff that isn't like theirs. And so rum's got some camaraderie to it, but it's usually a camaraderie from people who are of like rums. So the groups that are not adding anything, they get along really well, and they all kind of speak the same language. So from that world, Foursquare's Richard Seal is quickly becoming iconic, as well as somewhat infamous, because he will absolutely take a stand and call someone out. I also believe that she's now retired, but Appleton Estates Joyce Spence, who's a brilliant blender, is pretty much as big of a rock star as you can get in rum, and she's beloved. But on the larger scale side, they tend to stay very much in their corporate interests. But you do see some camaraderie and some support in the ranks. That's usually in their same styles.
Good deal.
How's the Pernod Ricard, I guess, of Havana been recepted by the rum industry?
I think that's an is what it is kind of deal. We're all just trying to wait for Cuba to get here, and there's a lot of people who believe that it's not going to happen. You're never actually going to see a bunch of Cuban rum on the shelves.
Is it arguably better? I mean,
man, I've tasted Cuban rum, and it's incredible. It's its own style. It's a light style but heavy at the same time, and it's phenomenal.
It's not just because we can't get it.
Yeah, no, it's actually.
So everybody loves Blanton straight from the barrel, right? Like they can't get it, right?
It's actually really amazing. The Cuban rum hype is real, and people ask me all the time about Pappy. Is it really that good? How to get that hype? I was like, well, it's really good. I mean, it's better. It was better, pre 2012, but even today, it's still really good. It's still easily one of the 10 best bourbons on the market. At least the 15-year-old expression is for me. So
I got a selfish question here. I'm going to Aruba in a little bit. What are some rums that I'll be able to find there, you think?
You're probably going to get a large concentration.
Can I get Havana Club there?
Yeah, you'll probably be able to get that there.
Awesome.
Like the real stuff. You'll probably also see some real cool independent bottled stuff. So I'd keep your eyes out on things from like Duncan Taylor.
Is that what we're drinking now, Duncan Taylor?
Yeah, this is one. I was actually pretty shocked to see this here because
it's fantastic. It's delicious.
I did not know they were in Kentucky.
So I got another question for you. So as a bourbon and a whiskey drinker, we're able to walk into a store and we can look at labels and we can read labels and we know exactly what they mean. Bernie Lubbers talked about all the time. He's saying that something, if it says straight whiskey, that's a badge of honor, right? So when it comes in regards of rum, like what's something that just a typical consumer should be looking at a label to understand? Is an additive in there? And one thing I've learned today is that maybe it's okay that there's additives in some of these. As you were saying, in Argentina, they have honey, right? And maybe that's an okay thing. But
Venezuela.
Same thing. Close enough. I'm sure my Venezuelan or listeners aren't going to appreciate that, but whatever.
Yeah. Actually, their government probably doesn't let them download podcasts.
There you go.
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, I guess what should you be looking for on a label as an everyday consumer?
Unfortunately, this is a hard one for me because they're not bound by anything to disclose stuff. There's not a...
or what should you take at face value, right? Because sometimes you'll see a big 23 slapped on the front of it and you think to yourself, oh,
okay.
It's if I'm a whiskey or a bourbon drinker, I know.
Or you see XO or something like
you know that has to be at least 23-year-old bourbon and nothing below it, right? That's a bourbon law. However, in a rum, it's a little bit different.
Here's one. Here are two things, and this is actually it's kind of weak in that you won't have that same kind of strength as you would with straight or bottle and bond, which rum can be bottled and bond, by the way, if it's made in the States. And that is if it's from Jamaica or Barbados. Those are two countries that do not allow anything added, and that's in their laws. But you have to look to see if it's bottled there, because someone can buy their juice and bring it over here and add something to it and still call it from Jamaica or Barbados. So that's two things that you can look for, and those are two countries I trust a lot. So from Barbados, you have Cockspur, you have Foursquare. Within Foursquare's brands, you can find Dorley's and Total Wine, the Real McCoy, which is a brand that's independently bottled. You have the Seal brand, which has looks like a seal on it. And then you have the ones that are labeled Foursquare with the underlying Foursquare. So that's a good one. Mount Gay. You can trust Mount Gay because they don't add anything. But again, taste them. And there's a bit of a sugar war that's going on in rum. And while you can probably tell where I skew, I've tried to be as objective as I possibly can, because they're in Venezuela. They say it's their heritage, and it's in their law that they can do it. and they can label it rum. So why shouldn't Diplomatico be allowed to do that? And I think what it comes down to is that all anybody really, really wants is transparency on the label. And I've had countless people tell me, it's like, yeah, we don't mind telling you we have sugar. I'm like, great, put it on the label, and there's, Appleton's Joy Spence. She's like, call it a liqueur, And so they take it one step further. It's like, oh, you're adding something. Well, that's a liqueur. Don't call it rum. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to bring attention to it. And there are times that it's, sweet is good, as long as it doesn't taste like it's chemical or, whatever you're looking for. You're looking for flavor. You're looking for flavor that's good.
Good deal. And, yeah. So I think, anybody that, why we had this podcast, of course, Fred came out with this book, Rum Curious. You can get it today, local bookstores. But I think there's one thing, in addition of buying the book, for anybody that is actually listening to this, I myself am intrigued, like, where are other sources of information to learn about rum, boards or anything like that?
Yeah, there's quite a few. One of my favorite bloggers is the Cocktail Wonk. He reminds me a lot of myself with his writing in the rum space. It's very similar to what I tried to do in bourbon about 8-10 years ago. And he's very, very technical, very detailed, very, very much calling out marketing bullshit. So it's Matthew Petrick. He's very, very talented. The Ministry of Rum is ran by a former writer who is now an importer, Ed Hamilton. It has a lot of great information out there. There's kind of like an obscure, it's an obscure like forum called Jimbo's Rum Project. There's a lot of Facebook forums.
I like that one.
I was like,
it's like Big Al's Beer-Readaville.
Yeah, Kentucky twang right there.
You get on there, and the guys like, they're fun to read. They're fun to read, but you also feel like you might be getting hacked while they're on their website.
It's a little too much advertising. Yeah.
It's one of those old,
GeoCities.
Yeah,
Angel Fire.
It actually reminds me of one of those.
Kenny Space.
But so that's a good place. Facebook has some real nice groups. The Ministry of Rum is where you will. That Facebook group is where you'll find a lot of the rum drama playing out.
Right.
So
awesome. Well, Fred, I want to say thank you again for coming on the show today.
Pleasure. Yeah,
teaching all our listeners all about rum, because I think it's I think you said it best in your article, is that you need some bunker buddies, right? You said that in your February article, and I think I've already got one bottle, probably going to buy another one or two, right? I'm not go crazy because shelf space is limited now, but however, I think there are some times that you kind of want to change it up, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a nice change of pace. After you introduced us last time, I kind of went into it pretty hardcore for a few months. I was like, screw this bourbon game. It's getting tired of this.
We're not camping out.
I'm not trying to get anyone to leave bourbon for sure.
Yeah.
But I think it's like...
but it wasn't you trying to get me to leave.
Yeah.
It was just, being a bourbon consumer is tough these days. So
it is very tough. But also, you gotta look at the graduations from the flavor profiles. I think
they're very similar.
There's a lot of similarities. A lot of it's the used barrel, used bourbon barrel. A lot of it's just like natural sweetness characteristic that's in rum. But another thing is a price point. Mm-hmm. You can find most of the rums under $90, or and most of the good rums between like $20 and $40. You just got to find the right store that will carry them. That's the problem with rum, is that they
probably never sell it.
Well,
as I say, there's some states that are better than others when it comes to rum purchasing, at least here in the
Florida.
Americas.
Yeah, Washington. Washington's an amazing state for buying rum. Look for where the rum bars are. So Washington, New York, Florida, California, Vegas, oddly. Which Vegas, they have everything. You just drink all the time there. But Kentucky, we're getting a little better. I've been on them for like 4 years to start carrying shit, so it's finally paying off.
Yeah, you told me one bottle, Ron Contarvio XO, I got one, and then I ran out, and I went to go back, and it was $10 higher, and I'm like, damn it, Fred. Just freaking telling everybody.
Love it.
It's like the Oprah.
Yeah, he's got his effect. So
I wish I had Oprah's buck.
Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't be talking to us.
yeah, well, that's what you got video now, right? So we'll be able to have that. We'll put some nice graphics in it. And
Exactly.
everybody gets one, right?
Exactly.
So, Fred, again, thank you for coming on the show today. First episode of Rum Pursuit. I don't know if
first one.
I don't know if there'll be a second one, but who knows?
Probably. Why not? It's fun.
Yeah, if you have another one, happy to join you again.
Well, fantastic. So, if you like what you hear, make sure you write some good reviews. We can always use good reviews on iTunes. It's goes a long way. So also, if you like the show, make sure you tell a friend. Helping spread this through word of mouth is the best way to get people in front of it, get the education spread. So if you got some other friends that are coming over for a whiskey tasting, say you got to listen to this podcast.
Yeah, and let us know what you want to hear also on the reviews or on our Facebook page. We want to keep this thing going, but we want to make sure y'all are still engaged. So just tell us what you want to hear, and we'll bring that to you.
Absolutely. Make sure you also check the Facebook page, because that's where all the videos are going to be posted. So you want to watch the video version of the podcast, make sure you go there, and you can see us talking here in person.
Got to figure out how to keep this GoPro from shutting off.
We'll get it. We'll figure it out at some point. But with that, we'll see you all next week.